they stay there, and they stay.
Greetings, this is Bradford Donald Keller Townsend, and this is a Forward Research Report. Shit Hits the Fan, Part 2, to the 10th Power, China Doomed. My previous video concerning China, pollution, water scarcity, social revolution, and the coming Ice Age, which will devastate and cause a catastrophic collapse in China, has been attacked probably by the Chinese National Government Cyber Warfare Department, and is not able to play on Reddit or on my channel. So I'm going to label this video in the hopes that they're not able to find it. The Chinese have one of the highest mean IQs in the world, and I'm sure that they have many brilliant software experts, and may be able to scan and play the videos, and they may stop this one from playing as well. I would like to repeat the points. The first one, and the major cause, and the chart that I'll put in this video, and I'll play it longer than just 5 seconds, shows that every dynasty, when there's a no sunspot period, when there's no sunspots, it's been proven with the highest correlation that you can really get in science. If you look at the R, and I'm just using the simple statistics, the correlation is very high. When the sunspots are low and the heliosphere is weak, cosmic radiation hits the Earth powerfully. There's less protection to block it out. We know this from isotopes, from all types of core samples, from underneath lakes, ponds, core samples from the Arctic regions, and geological strata, that type of thing, that every time that's happened, the government of China has fallen. This time it will be much worse, because the population of China is more than the world population was 200 years ago. Not only just a little bit, but quite a bit. And advances in hygiene, washing your hands and using medical gloves, for example, when you deliver a baby, the mother survives and the baby survives over 90% of the time. It used to be in ancient times only 1 out of 10 babies survived. Then it improved a little bit, and only 1 out of 5 babies would survive to adolescence or puberty. You know, where you get hair between your legs and the girls bleed on their periods. And people historically only lived to be between 30 and 35 if they made it to puberty. And that really made culture different. We don't understand today, because we have a median ages of 30, 40 years old. Young populations where you had a teenager or someone in their young 20s being the emperor, and the courtiers or their cronies and advisors and privy councils, or whatever you want to call them, were all young people, teenagers in early 20s. It was kind of a club, frat house, tree house, cut your hand, do a blood handshake, your blood brother oath kind of thing. And then these people, whether they were Mongols or Vikings or French lords or whatever, would do their blood brother, buddy, mate, shipmate pledges, and then go out and fight wars and loot and pillage and that kind of thing, and riot. They get drunk in taverns or whatever they call them out in the Far East, and rebel and attack the castles and fortresses, or ambush the aristocrats out hunting or traveling between their estates. And so it's much different culture, just demographically, when you have a very young culture where the young men are full of testosterone in their prime, and you don't have many old people around because they've all died off of diseases. Even a toothache was deadly, as the infection would spread throughout your body and kill you. So then the hygiene of killing rats that carry fleas that can spread typhus or plague, like the bubonic plague. Um, Sewers were deadly in cities like London and Paris, and the populations were only in the tens of thousands. The largest cities in Europe, you couldn't have two largest cities. Ancient Rome did have like a sewer water system, but it was hard to have a large population without people would just dump their chamber pots out their windows, and cities you could vomit and literally pass out a strong young man in his 20s because cities were so disgusting. And China, having sewers and vaccinations and spraying for mosquitoes to keep down malaria and other diseases that mosquitoes, well, that's going to go away with global cooling. And when there is more cosmic radiation hitting the Earth, the volcanoes and earthquakes will be very strong. And this may be the strongest cosmic radiation impacts of the Earth in over 10,000 years. And we'll have 9+ Richter earthquakes. And this will tear down the infrastructure. So if the ports and bridges and railroads are shattered in the United States, for example, the Mississippi might run north instead of south. The bridges crossing the Mississippi won't be able to transport food. The railways will be broken. It could take as much as 3 years after a series of 9.0 earthquakes in the heartland of the U.S. for the infrastructure. 30–40% of the American people could die. There's only 3 days of food, whether it be China or the United States, in the grocery stores, and there would be runs on the grocery stores. And in China, it's even worse. They restrict people's mobility, and they've polluted their aquifers, just dumping toxic waste. They have air pollution. The problems there, just geographically, they have a little bit more arable land, which is even more depleted of minerals that you need for your health. And China is just in a horrible situation. They brutally repress their minority populations. The Muslim populations, they're a lot like Cossacks. Some of them have very Caucasian features, or Caucasians. They even have some blonde-haired, blue-eyed people like me up there in northern China, and they're put into zoos, and tourists come and take pictures of them and actually walk into their homes and watch them do arts and crafts or change their babies' diapers. They can just walk in and intrude on families, and they have them do construction and make their homes look like they did 100 years ago, and do terracotta work, and which is a type of plaster with Muslim motifs. And there'll be like 200 tourists, Han Chinese, that these kind of half Caucasian, half Mongolian racial type people. They have these great big cameras, and they zoom in and take pictures of them like they're monkeys in a zoo. It's just horrific. And these people have done suicide attacks against the government. So they built giant high-rise building complexes and brought in tens of thousands of SWAT-type police and their wives and child. Built swimming pools and tennis courts and basketball courts like you would an American military base in Italy, or in Seychelles or somewhere, like a Navy base for the British Navy. They're like have everything a country club would have to lure people to volunteer for their special police services to oppress these people. And then they have a whole fleets of vehicles, armored vehicles with rocket launchers that can shoot tear gas or poisonous gas, and battering rams and Kevlar ballistic shields with bulletproof glass where they can queue up like a whole squad of men, 8 or 10 men, and kick in a door, and then if they get shot at, the bullets will bounce off the shield, and they got Kevlar, real thick helmets, and shin guards and chest protector, vests and everything, and they can throw in the flashbang grenades and poison grenades while they're wearing their night vision goggles and their all that kind of thing, and of course their gas masks. And so they just crushed the Muslim minorities. They did that to other minorities. I don't really know all the details as they censor all this. So they made tens of millions of these minorities just vitriolically hateful of the government. And when there's earthquakes and the bridges collapse and the food can't be moved around the country, medicine can't be moved around, people can't be moved around, people will be ferociously angry because their children die and they have to nurse them maybe for months or years before they die from birth defects, from all the poison, from just unregulated manufacturing, building solar panels, building windmills. These use rare earth elements. They use base metals and even precious metals, and the processing of these and the manufacturing of them produces all types of toxic waste. And you can't have any type of heavy metal in your body. Aluminium, lead, they go to the receptors of your nervous system and your cells, because your blood has iron in it. And I have a son who's a biological chemist, and have other chemists and doctors and scientists in my family, and they could better explain it, but I did take biology and chemistry in school and have a little bit of an idea. And I just know that there's no safe amount of any type of heavy metal of you ingesting. And these other chemicals cause damage to your DNA, RNA, and your nervous system. And there's no safe amount to ingest. Fortunately, these are put into vaccines for really no good reason. And they're giving these vaccines, which is causing autism, which is a different, but they especially do these in the poor countries. And they're the guinea pigs or the rats that they use to test in the thousands and thousands of these vaccines. And they've been doing that in China as well. And in Israel, they use the Israelis as guinea pigs too, the Jews. But China has, the horrific pollution problem. They don't have enough water. There's water scarcity. They cannot continue their civilization. If there was no global cooling, the water scarcity, it would bring down China. So they have three big things. The revolutionary pressures of their brutality could bring them down. It's like 18th century colonial brutality, and then they're brutal overseas too, to the Africans. They have global cooling is going to crush them. They have the pollution problem, and any of those three would bring them down. And then they've mishandled their financial system. Getting your financial system right in any country is probably the most difficult challenge that a country faces. The United States, China, Japan, Britain, France, Italy, Spain, Greece, Brazil, Argentina, all Mexico, Canada are all having difficulty with their financial systems. They all are facing insolvency. My home state became insolvent in the 1800s and went bankrupt, and we are not allowed to borrow money. We have to do a pay-as-you-go system. The United States will go insolvent and collapse. Every fiat system in history collapses. The average is about 70 years. They don't teach you that in school. So the United States is much better positioned than Japan, even if we have the 9.0 earthquakes on the Madrid Fault that breaks all our bridges in the Midwest, because we have much more arable land per capita, a better climate. We have much better rivers, and rivers are like 20 times more efficient for transporting goods than roads or rail. Rail's better than by road. So we'll be able to rebuild and go to an organic farming, low energy electricity economy with the hydro and the remaining coal and things, and go to a currency that's backed by commodities, that's non-inflationary. We have massive amounts of gold and silver. We have most of the world's gold and silver is in the United States. In the Grand Canyon, we have the biggest hoard of precious metals in the world, protected by the United States Marine Corps. And we can have a literal gold and silver backed currency where you go to a bank and they'll give you coins. So we're by far the best situated country in the world to be able to go through an insolvency, financial collapse. We could probably be back on our feet if we had good management and leadership in only maybe 3 to 5 years, and then transition over the next 50 years to a low energy economy that only uses 10 to 20% of the energy that we use today. Everybody starts riding horses and using wagons again. Then there'd be pockets of places that have electricity for hydro, where they recycle the windmills and the solar panels and that type of thing, because we're going to be using up all the coal and all the uranium and all the other fossil fuels. Natural gas we're rapidly depleting it, and that's what the global CO2 thing is about. We don't want a power grid being built in sub-Saharan Africa using, millions of tons of coal, every week. If they build 1,000 coal-fired power plants, the coal's supposed to all be used up by 2060, 2070 as it is. If they build thousands of small coal power plants and start using all their coal in Africa, and then start bidding on the world market for coal, or if they built more in South America and more in China and Japan, might deplete 20, 30 years earlier. So they're just being selfish and wanting, they don't want everybody else using up the coal. That's what it's about. The rich countries, which are less than 20% of the population, use up 80% of the world's resources, and it's actually been increasing every year. Europeans in North America and Europe are actually, the rich are getting richer, and they're consuming more in proportion, not less, even with India and China. And that's why they have big gas lines in China. People have to queue up, and they pay people, the wealthy middle class people, which to them, a middle class person in America is very wealthy in China, comparatively to the average person. They pay people just to wait in line to get gas for their BMW or General Motors Buick new car. Then they go to work after they've paid somebody, to sit in line for 2 hours. They say that there's all this oil, but because of politics and the U.S. and British military, French military and such, they don't let the Chinese have all the oil that they would like or could use for their millions of cars that are going on the road every month in China. They're restricted. They divvy up the oil, in back rooms. They're not smoky anymore, but big giant tables or conference, banquet hall type things, and because we have complete supremacy of the seas, which people don't appreciate. We can stop the movement of goods around the world, food, medicine, energy, in the form of natural gas, coal, and petroleum primarily. And so if anybody doesn't play ball, the Allied navies, of the West can just starve out and kill without dropping a single bomb, large portions of the population, and then the government will be overthrown, and the rich leaders that are 100 millionaire, billionaire type people will have to flee their country or get slaughtered in their country by the angry masses. Because once people have nothing to lose and they're starving, and their children may be dying because they're not getting their medicine, they'll storm the royal palaces. They'll get mowed down by the police bullets, and then the police and troops may be unwilling to shoot their own people, thinking my cousin might be out there, or my brother, or my dad protesting. Sorry about that. Um, on a roll here. So, China is totally screwed. If you are able to get access to this, get out of China now. It's unpredictable when things are going to go to hell there. It could be tomorrow, it could be 3 years from now, but global cooling has actually been proven to be correct. The drought in California and the west coast of North America has ended. They've gotten basically rivers from the sky, deluges coming down. There's still snow skiing in the mountains of North America for the first time in decades. They're having a free come and snow ski days. You don't have to pay whatever the lift tickets are anymore, $80. It's the inflation for snow skiing. I love to snow ski. Is just man, it's so expensive to snow ski now. But they've had free days at most of the resorts to celebrate that they still have snow in June, and the dams are ready to burst and overflowing. So they'll have plenty of irrigation water for the valleys there. Some of the best farming in the world is in California, and they'll have abundant water to irrigate for all that fruit and vegetables that they grow there. So if you can get out of China, I would. Here in Indianapolis, we have the Confucian Institute, and have always recruited Chinese to immigrate here and to come study here at our several colleges and universities we have, especially Indiana University, Purdue University in Indianapolis, where we have our law school, medical school, and school of engineering. Our public schools. It's our largest university now, and we always have like 1,000. Lots of Chinese students and Chinese American students there, and a lot of them are from Communist Party officials. So I've had them as laboratory partners and studied math with them and all that, because a lot of them study math because their English isn't so great, and math is something you can do if you're struggling with a second language. They're from wealthy Chinese families that can pay the $40,000, $50,000 a year tuition to come here, and then they have a nice friendly place with their own lounge and fluent Mandarin speakers that they can hang out and have coffee and get help with tutoring with fluent Chinese speakers with whatever they need, and tell them where to go and help them find a place to live and all that. I mean, they really cater to the Chinese here. The concierge service type thing, and tutoring in their home language for their non math and engineering type courses. It's really something, and I don't know if this video will be able to be played. I need to be creative, and then if I don't know if I'll get any views if it's not related to the subject. Peace. I love Chinese people, and I love humanity in general, and I think it's one of the greatest civilizations. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the Chinese. Can't go into that details, but I was a Chinese person saved my life once, and um, so for you, a lot of these good Chinese folks, if you have any way to get out of that country, flee for your life. Bless you all, and have a wonderful day.